Let the glory of the Lord, let it rise among us. Let the glory of the Lord rise among us. Let the praises to our King rise among us. Let it rise. The songs of the Lord rise among us. The songs of the Lord that rise among us. The joy of our King Come on, lift your hands and praise the Lord. Amen. When I think about the Lord, how He saved me, and how He raised me, how He filled me with the Holy Ghost, how He healed me to the uttermost. When I think about the Lord, how He picked me up and turned me around, how He placed my feet on solid ground. When I think about the Lord, how He saved me, how He raised me, how He filled me with the Holy Ghost, how He healed me to the uttermost. When I think about the Lord, how He picked me up and turned me around, how He placed my feet on solid ground. It makes me wanna shout, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. Lord, you're worthy of all of the glory, and all of the honor, and all of the praise. It makes me wanna shout, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. Lord, you're worthy of all of the glory, and all of the honor, and all of the praise. When I think about the Lord, how He saved me, how He raised me, how He filled me with the Holy Ghost, and how He healed me to the uttermost. When I think about the Lord, how He picked me up and turned me around, how He placed my feet on solid ground. It makes me wanna shout, hallelujah, oh thank you, Jesus. Lord, you're worthy of all of the glory, and all of the honor, and all of the praise. It makes me wanna shout, hallelujah, oh thank you, Jesus. Lord, you're worthy of all of the glory, and all of the honor, and all of the praise. It makes me wanna shout, hallelujah, oh thank you, Jesus. Lord, you're worthy of all of the glory, and all of the honor, and all of the praise. It makes me wanna shout. Amen. Hallelujah. Bless you. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. There's just something about that name. He's my master, Savior, Lord. Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, there's just something about that name. Well, he's my master, Savior, Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. He is Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. The kings and kingdoms, they will all pass away, but there's something about that name. Let me hear your voice this morning say, Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. He's my master, Savior, Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. He is Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. The kings and kingdoms, they will all pass away, but there's something about that name. I want to say his name in this place again this morning and say, Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. He's my master, my Savior, he's Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. He's Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. The kings and kingdoms, they will all pass away, but there's something about that name. I know there's something about that name. Yes, there's something about that name. Come on, give him a shout of praise, amen. He's worthy, amen. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, for oh my soul, rejoice, take joy, my King. morning. Amen. Love to be with him, Lord, be made. But we are continuing to look at the I am statements of Jesus. And we've been looking at these things. Those things that are found in the Gospel of John. He talks about, I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the gate of the sheep. I am the good shepherd, which you can tell that's where we're on today, because it's white behind here. It's highlighted. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life, and I am the true vine. These 7 statements help us realize that Jesus is the great I am of the Old Testament, who has become flesh in the New Testament. He was God. He was God of the Old Testament, but he now become flesh in the New Testament, and he seeks to save those of us who are lost. That's what he came to do. And John shares this very wonderfully in his gospel. But this morning, like I said, we're going to look at probably the most famous of all the sayings, which is the Good Shepherd one. Now, speaking of shepherd, I got a little joke I want to share with you this morning. There was a blonde who was tired of being made fun of for being a blonde. So she decided what she was going to do. She was going to have a makeover. She had her hair done, she had it dyed, she had it cut and styled. She went out and bought herself a brand new convertible and said, I'm going to go out, just look around. She go around the countryside, and as she's riding around, she notices a shepherd with his flock out in the field. She sits there a while looking at it. She approaches the shepherd. She says, excuse me, sir, if I can tell you exactly how many sheep you have in your herd, could I please take one and take it home with me? He says, you know what? Yeah, why not? He says, if you can guess the exact numbers in my herd, he says, most certainly I will give you one. And all of a sudden she spouts out 382. He was shocked. She was right. He had 382 sheep. He says, well, ma'am, you were right. I'm going to live with mine in the deal. Go ahead and choose me. She looks over at her very, very carefully, looks over her. She grabs one. She places it in her car. And the shepherd looks at her and says, ma'am, may I ask you a question? Can I issue you a challenge? She says, sure. He says, if I can guess the true color of your hair, can I get my dog back?
And your point is?
Just a little humor to start off. This morning, Bobby, we're talking about sheep. And but before I really even go any further, before I talk about the shepherd this morning, the good shepherd, let me talk about the sheep for a minute. Maybe there's some stuff about sheep maybe you never knew. But here's some things. Number one, sheep are dirty. Their wool gets dirty and they can do nothing at all about it. They don't have the wherewithal how to get themselves clean. Sheep are defenseless. They have no means to protect themselves. They're completely defenseless. Sheep are dependent. Sheep require more attention than any other animal. And sheep are dumb. Sheep, if left to themselves, will destroy themselves. I shared this last week. If a sheep starts to walk off a cliff, the next sheep behind it, if they're following, will walk off, will walk off, will walk off. I mean, how many of you ever watched those cartoons where someone will be riding a horse out west and they're getting it, and all of a sudden it stops on a dime. And usually you see the rider go flying off or something, or he's hanging on by the rein. What's he hanging over? Usually when that happens, it's a cliff, because these animals, they notice it's dangerous. Boom, they stop. But not a sheep. The sheep would just one right after the other. So again, sheep are dirty. They're defenseless. They're dependent. They're dumb. And throughout the Bible, and I shared this last week too, and throughout the Bible, the Lord calls us what? Sheep. So we too are dirty, defenseless, dependent, and dumb. But yet, in all that, He calls Himself a shepherd. Not just a shepherd, but a good shepherd. We're going to look at the saying where Jesus calls Himself the good shepherd this morning, which is found in John chapter 10.
It's later on, we dealt with John 10, him being the gate, but now we're going to look at him being the shepherd. In verses 11 through 18, this is what we read. It says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. A hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. He will abandon the sheep because they don't belong to him, and he isn't their shepherd. And so the wolf attacks them and scatters the flock. The hired hand runs away because he's working only for the money and doesn't really care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and they know me, just as my Father knows me, and I know the Father. So I sacrifice my life for the sheep. I have other sheep too that are not of this sheepfold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. The Father loves me because I sacrificed my life so that I may take it back again. No one can take my life from me. I sacrifice it voluntarily. For I have authority to lay it down when I have to, and also to take it up again. For this is what my Father has commanded. Like I said, we've been discussing throughout this whole series that Jesus says, I am. Again, he's classifying, he's depicting himself as God, as being equal with God, as being equal with the I am, where God told Moses, tell them I am sent you. Tell them I am that I am. Jesus is identifying with this. See, the Israelites normally considered the name of God too holy to even be spoken. The fact is, they only ever spoke it one time a year. And that was on the Day of Atonement. And in fact, if a scribe was writing the name of God, what the practice was literally, he would take a bath before he wrote the name. And once he wrote the name, he would take the pen and destroy it. That's how much they reverenced the name of God. And here, Jesus is literally, when he says, I am, see, in those I am, when you're saying he's using the name of God. He's declaring himself as the name of God. But also, when he's talking about the shepherd, he calls himself good. He says, I am the good shepherd. Jesus uses the word good. Good, it means, actually, I looked this up, good is an adjective. It can be mainly used as an adjective. It can be used as a noun, but as an adjective, it describes. There are 42 meanings to good. I mean, that's a lot. Using good as an adjective to describe something, there's 42 meanings. If you actually type in dictionary.com and type in good and look at it, 42 meanings for good will come up. All referring to what it can be referring to. And one of those meanings is this, which means beautiful and valuable. Jesus is beyond being morally good. He is also excellent and preeminent in every aspect of humanity. He's incapable of anything bad. He is good in every way as God himself is good. Hence why he can say I am. And the reason why he's that way, because he is God. That's why he could use this term. And see, to the listeners of his day, this would have been very shocking and scandalous to them, because to them, only God was good. Only God is good. And for him to say that I'm good, he was declaring himself equal with God. See, you say, well, Pastor, how do you know? Well, let me take you to another story. There's another story that's told about a man named, it tells us he just identified him as a rich young ruler. And if you remember, anybody remember, how did the rich young ruler approach Jesus? What did he call him? We call him what? But what did he call him before that, teacher or rabbi? Pastor. He said, good teacher. And what was, anybody remember what Jesus' reply to him was? He says, only God is good. See, in other words, he was making that man begin to think, so are you ascribing to me that I am God? So Jesus knew exactly, again, Jesus didn't use words off the cuff. He didn't just necessarily say things haphazardly. But he knew exactly what he was saying when he used this word good. And also, like I said, this would have been something that would have sort of blown their minds. I mean, think about it. There are some times that we, in our Christianese, you know what I say, you know what I mean? In our Christian lingo, in our way of thinking, maybe you were raised in church, or maybe you've been in church any amount of time. There are certain things that sometimes the people take certain phrases and uses them improperly. What do? Are we like, oh, that's cool? Is that what we do? What do? We become what? Become upset, don't we? You shouldn't be saying, or you shouldn't be using that. Come on, don't be self-righteous on me this morning. Hey, me, Pastor. Man, you lie. We do that, don't we? So you can understand where these Pharisees and where these Sadducees were coming from. Because the statement he makes, you can understand them being upset because they're beginning to see what Jesus said, because they realize that in their minds only God is good. And also in their minds, King David was their shepherd. He was the greatest shepherd they had, because the coming Messiah was correlated to David. Granted, I know Moses was great and all of that, but David was known as the shepherd, because what? He started out as a shepherd. So David was recognized as being a shepherd, but yet Jesus was now declaring himself to be their shepherd and their God. See, Jesus was saying to them that he was greater than David. See, in John chapter 6, if you remember, in claiming to be the bread of life, Jesus was claiming to be greater than who? Who gave him the bread from heaven? You might remember? Who was present? Who? Moses. So in claiming to be the bread of heaven, he was claiming to be greater than Moses. And then in chapter 8, in claiming himself the light of the world, Jesus says that he's now, before Abraham was, I am. He was claiming to be better than even Abraham. It is as though throughout the book of John that Jesus lined up all the heroes of the Jewish faith, the trifecta, Moses, Abraham, and David, and said, I am definitely elevated above everyone and everything because I am God. I mean, he took the people that they truly admired, and he says, I'm greater than them all. And the thing is, with us looking back in hindsight, with us being believers here today, what do we say to that statement? Most definitely you are. But the reason why we say that is because because of knowing Jesus Christ, we are now enlightened in that. We now understand that. We now see that. But in their time, you understand, they didn't understand this. So it was literally freaking them out for him to say this. But Jesus is making this statement. He's declaring himself to be greater than all of us. Like I said, so this, of course, would send the Pharisees into an uproar, because they consider this to be heresy. They consider this to be blasphemy. They consider something that, you know what? I mean, if they took a bath before they ever wrote the name of God, and then destroyed the pen immediately after they wrote it, if they would only use this name once a year, it shows you how much what they thought about this name and how highly they respected it. And here's Jesus. It seems like to them it's just using it off the cuff. I mean, we know he's not. So we can understand them being upset. And they also, even though they looked at David being their shepherd, the Pharisees and Sadducees, because they were in control of the temple, considered themselves to be the shepherds of the people. We are the ones, because they even refer to the people many times as being like sheep, as being dumb. But Jesus, when he begins to reveal this statement here, he really points out exactly who they are. He points out that they are just hirelings. That they're just in it for the money. He says, no, I'm the good shepherd. I am the true shepherd. And that you're just hirelings. And how's it? And he says, in fact, he says, I'm going to prove it to you. And this is how he does it. He does it through what I have down here called redemption and relationship. In the redemption part of it, when he begins to read this portion of Scripture, he declares, the good shepherd lays down his life. I don't know if you noticed, when we read those verses, how many times the word sacrifice came up. But here's what he says. Let's look at it again. Here's what he says. in John 10, verses 11 through 13, and verses 17 through 18. This is what we read. It says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. A hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. He will abandon the sheep because they don't belong to him, and he isn't their shepherd. And so the wolf attacks them and scatters the flock. The hired hand runs away because he's working only for the money and doesn't really care about the sheep. And in verse 17 it says, my Father loves me because I sacrifice my life so I may take it back again. No one takes my life from me. I sacrifice it voluntarily. For I have authority to lay it down when I want to, and also to take it up again. For this is what my Father has commanded. In fact, even the verse in between verses, the word sacrifice is in there again. So all throughout this, Jesus is saying, the good shepherd sacrifices their life. See, we all know that Jesus died in our place. I don't think I'm going to get into all this more, but I shared with you more. Jesus more than just took our place. If you remember I was sharing it with you? He became what we were and died that way on the cross so we could be truly made innocent. He became sin for us. He more than just took our place. Remember, I sort of showed that to you, sort of related to you this way. For instance, if there was a serial killer in prison, and they were on death row, and they were getting ready to execute this serial killer, and someone went up and said, you know what? Don't execute John Smith. I'll take his place. Kill me instead. Now think about it. How many of us would be satisfied with that swap out? Who here would be satisfied with that? Why not? Why would we not be satisfied with that?
They didn't do it.
They didn't do it.
Justice would be served.
Truly, justice would be served because the guilty party wasn't dying. It was still alive. So, it's not just because, it's not that we just want blood. We want the guilty party to be held responsible and to answer for their guilt. So if we would be satisfied about that, why? So I haven't taken time on this morning. Why do you think God would be satisfied with just Jesus just taking our place and God don't kill him, kill me instead? Well, we're still just fine. That's the miraculous thing about the cross. Somehow, in some way, God, in being God, was literally able to take our sin off of us, place it on him. Now, understand this. Jesus is still sinless. I'm not saying Jesus sinned at all, so understand it. But literally, he became sin. So when God looked at him, God saw him as him being the serial killer. Saw him as being the liar. Saw him as being the adulterer. Saw him as being... And then when he looked at me, because Jesus is now in it, God now looks at me that I'm innocent. But the thing is, in that innocence, I have to believe in that one who died on the cross. It all goes, again, it all centers around him. Jesus. Because even God, the guilt, the sin had to be taken care of. Sin had to be destroyed, and Jesus destroyed it in his body when he died on the cross. That's why I'm saying, the bottom line is, that's why Jesus said, the Son set you free, you're truly free. I wasn't planning on calling here this morning, but I guess I'm going for a reason. When he set you free, that's why we can say no to sin. That's why anything that has a hold on us, we can say no to, because Jesus killed it on the cross. It only has the power over us that we give it, because he has declared, as long as we believe in him, he's given us the power to live free of that, where it no longer has any power. And again, he proved that he was the good shepherd by sacrificing his life. Jesus, he didn't die as a martyr. He didn't die because someone murdered him. He willingly, he voluntarily gave up his life as the good shepherd. This is what he declares, that the good shepherd, I'm the good shepherd, and I sacrifice my life. I willingly sacrifice my life. In fact, C.S. Lewis makes this quote. He says, and I never really thought about this. It cost God nothing, as far as we know, to create nice things, or create the things where He said, remember at creation, every time He was done, what did He say? The Lord looked at it and said it was good. Oh, it was nice. It was good. It cost God nothing, as far as we know, to create nice things. But to convert our rebellious wills, it cost Him crucifixion. Why? A lot of times we're used to good things costing something, but God did the good things, the nice things. As far as we're going to cost Him nothing, it's just part of who He is. But to redeem us, to get to a place where we can literally have our minds change, it cost Him crucifixion. See, again, as Jesus is making these statements that I am the good shepherd, see, sheep were raised in the shadows of the temple for one single purpose, for becoming a sacrifice. I want you to understand this. There were sheepfolds there where they raised sheep so people could come in the times when they needed to buy the sheep so it could be sacrificed on the altar in the temple. All near there. But right near the temple, in the shadow of the temple, on a hill called Golgotha, the shepherd laid down his life. So in just looking distance from the temple, the good shepherd proved who he was, that he was the good shepherd by giving his life for the sheep. See, a hired hand is just one who is paid, who does the work of a mercenary. Anybody know what the term mercenary? Have you heard it? I know Jim. I know you different one. Who's heard the term mercenary? Anybody know what is a mercenary? Someone who's hired. In other words, a lot of times you hear about mercenaries more so in referring to what? Battles, military. You know, an army. You know, hire an army of mercenaries. They're hired. What'd you say? They're hired guns.
Covert operation.
Yeah, they're hired guns, are what they are. They're getting paid to go out and fight for somebody. Now the difference is a mercenary doesn't have his skin in this battle. So if all of a sudden the fight is going to get a little too tough, the mercenary says, you know what? The pay's not worth it. I'm out of here. Where a person who's truly into the cause, whether they're getting paid or not, they're going to fight for that cause. Where a mercenary does not do that. A mercenary is only in it for the money. Sort of reminds me that there was a story I read about how a storm is getting ready to hit this resort. And the cabana boy was put in charge of making sure everything was picked up and ready. But all of a sudden, the rain would get a little harder, the wind would be able to blow a little bit stronger, and finally he said, you know what? Forget it. I'm seeking shelter. And when the storm was over, all of a sudden there were a lot of umbrellas that were destroyed and bent. There were chairs that were lost to the ocean. I mean, they weren't even around. But you know, again, he was a hired person. But I guarantee you, the owner of the place, if they would have been there, odds are they would have done what? They would have probably weathered the storm a little bit longer. Why? Because it was their investment. It was their stuff. In other words, it had value to them. It was their belonging. See, the hired hand, it's not there. So guess what? They don't care. As you see up here, see, the hired hand runs in the face of danger. The hired hand leaves the sheep vulnerable to the attack. The hired hand is only in it for the money. And that's exactly how Jesus describes these Pharisees. But here's the thing, you know, many times it's very easy, we can see, you know, when we look at this and we read things in the Bible, it's very easy for us to look at the Pharisees and different ones like that, or even other people in our life, and it's amazing how we can see the fault in their life, isn't it? How we say, you know, what Pastor talked about, that person there, they're a hired hand. They're not really in it for God. It's amazing how we can see that, right? Well, let's spin it around and sort of look at us this way. Uh-oh, is he going there? Yes, I am. You may sit there and say, well, Pastor, I'm committed to God. I'm committed to His church. I'm committed to the commission. Are you really? Are you? Let me ask you some questions this morning. See, these hit me just as much as you, so don't think I'm up here acting self-righteous, okay? But again, something to think about. Is personal and corporate worship a priority? Is spending time growing and studying His Word a regular habit? Are you striving to be obedient in every aspect of your life? Are you a faithful steward? Or are you looking for an excuse? A way to get out. The escape clause. Are you using your gifts to serve His church and His commission? Do you tell others about the validity of your relationship with God? I could go on and on and on. But the question I ask is, are you a follower of the shepherd or a hireman? As a saying that's been going around, I guess, about the past 2 years, are you a fan or a follower? Are you just staying in the outside edges? Or are you truly up close and personal? Shines some light on our life, doesn't it? How can you answer, or how do you answer these questions? Jesus showed how much superior He was by sacrificing His life for the sheep by laying it down. Like I said, He proved He was better than the Pharisees and all of them by sacrifice, by redemption, and by relationship. And here's how He shows it in relationship. The good shepherd knows his sheep. In verses 14 through 16 we read, it says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and they know me. Just as my Father knows me, and I know the Father, so I sacrifice my life for the sheep. I have other sheep too that are not in this sheepfold. I must bring them also. They will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. Jesus says, He says, I know. Jesus, He knows His sheep. The word know means to know through experience, and was used as a Jewish expression of physical intimacy. This is not a book knowledge, but a personal knowledge of someone or something. In other words, hands-on experience. Closeness experience. In other words, you know them because what? You hang around them. And you've heard me use this type of thing before. There are certain people that when we hang around them enough, we begin to what? Pick up their traits. It's like, I've shared before, it's like my brother is next to me in age and his son Ryan. Because of Ryan being around his dad for so many years, you could see the mannerism my brother has, he has, and you can see it. In fact, yesterday we were sort of talking about Kara. Kara was getting ready for the bridal shower yesterday, and she was acting like her dad because she's a mini Dave, which is not always a good thing. Because those of you know what I'm talking about when I'm saying, but again, she's me. And I don't know how good he is being on a girl, but because of the closeness of relationship, I know. I mean, I'm going to think of Glenda and Jill. Just mannerisms, words, phrases. Because you hang around that individual, you just what? You pick up those things. It just becomes a part of who you are. And the good thing is about Jesus is He never picks up any of our bad stuff. But yet He knows us. But yet when we're around Him, we begin to pick up His habits, In other words, instead of being a liar anymore, we want to be honest. I could go real far and small, but I'm not. I'm just sort of just trying to help you understand this. But truly, it was a Jewish expression for physical intimacy, of closeness. See, Jesus knows you and wants you to know Him. He knows everything about you, good and bad. And He loves you anyway. You matter to Him. You know, I'm going to jump back into this in a second. Let me just say this. Don't you get amazed? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Isn't it amazing how when we know we're not doing what we're supposed to do, how we try to hide doing it? Now again,
Have you been into peanut butter again?
I guess I have. We may be able to guess. We may be able to hide it from those we have physical contact with. But it's amazing how we think because we close the door, or because we're in an area that no one there knows us, how we're hiding. And yet, we fail to remember many times that God sees everything. There's nothing that escapes His attention. There's nothing, the Bible tells us, that is hidden from Him. So He knows you're good. He knows you're bad. But you know what? Like I said, He loves you anyway. He's not a fair weather friend. He's not a fair weather Savior. He loves you. And you matter to Him. Just as a shepherd knows the individual bleats and maws of his sheep, the good shepherd knows every detail about us. What's probably the most famous portion of Scripture that talks about the shepherd? Anybody know? Psalms 23. Psalms 23. I'm going to read this to you real quick, and I'm going to tell you something about here. Psalm 23. I'm going to read from the New Living Translation. It's not up there, so you have to listen. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to His name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessing. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. See, Jesus is comparing Himself to the psalm that David wrote. The Good Shepherd knows every detail about us. He knows, here's what He does. He provides. He knows our basic needs. He knows what we need. He pilots. He knows our need for direction. He protects. He knows our need for security. And He pursues. He knows our need for compassion. He knows our need for Him to reach out to us and bring us back in. See, this is a give and take relationship. He knows the sheep, and the sheep know the shepherd. They know His voice, His touch, His compassion, His love, His discipline. And we experience His leading every day. And I have that as a question. Do you know this relationship? Do you know this kind of relationship with Jesus? Do you truly know His voice? Do you know His touch? Do you know His compassion? Do you know His love? Do you know His discipline? Do you experience His leading? Now I'm going to close with just a thing here and a very small story. If you're here today, maybe you're saying, Pastor, you know, I thought I knew the Good Shepherd, but I don't know his voice, his touch, his compassion, his love, his discipline. Maybe you're unsure. Let me sort of put this out to you. Then either you have been misled by a hireling, someone who's led you down the wrong way, or else you become obviously separated from his love. You may be here today, but you still may be separated. If you're not seeing, and if you don't know his voice, his touch, his compassion, his love, his discipline, and his leading in your life, either someone has led you astray or you walked away. And you need to come back to the shepherd. You need to experience what we read about. The one song we talk about, reckless love. Remember, he says he leaves the 99. In Matthew chapter 18, verses 12 through 14, it says, if a man has 100 sheep and one of them wander away, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others on the hills and go out to search for the one that is lost? And when he finds it, I tell you the truth, he will rejoice over it more than over the 99 that didn't wander away. In the same way, is it not my heavenly Father will that every one of these little ones should not perish? In other words, if you're separated this morning, he's calling you back. He's on the look for you. He's on the look for you. Remember, we've been talking about Noah. Our musicians can come up if they need to and get in place. But there's a story told of this actor, this famous actor he was invited to a party, and they asked him to read and recite different things. I mean, he was a very, very talented actor. And also at this party was an old minister. And as this actor was reciting and reading these different forms of poetry and reciting things, people were just in awe of his skill. And the pastor said, would you quote Psalms 23? Would you say Psalms 23? And the actor said, well, he said, I'll say that as long as, when I'm done, you also say. So the pastor agreed. So the actor gets up and he begins to recite the 23rd Psalm. And when he was done, because of his diction and just the way he presented it, the whole crowd stood up and applauded and cheered because of his recital of it. And the next he said, Pastor, it's your turn. The pastor gets up. The pastor begins to start. And as he's starting, he has this old, raspy voice from many years of preaching. Sometimes his words didn't sound necessarily the best. But when it was all said and done, there was no applause. But also, there was not a dry eye in the place. And when the meeting was over, someone came to the actor and said, why did people respond the way they did to this minister the way they did? And why was there just a hush and tears flowing from their eyes? He says the difference is, I know the 23rd Psalm, but he knows the Good Shepherd. He's intimate with him. So the thing is, it's not about the applause. It's about realizing who God is and what he desires to do in your life. It's about understanding who Jesus is and what he desires to do in your life. What he's offering. You're not gone too far. You haven't walked too far down any road to where his love and his compassion can't reach you and touch you and bring you back and bring you home. See, he wasn't in it for the money, Jesus. He was in it to sacrifice his life for the sheep. He said he proved it by giving his life. And he shows how much he loves us by knowing us intimately. Here's the thing. Whether you decide to serve him or not, it doesn't change the fact that He knows you and He loves you in spite of all your faults. In spite of all the ugliness in your life. He loves you. And He desires to have a relationship with you. So do you know the Good Shepherd? So let me tell you this. He desires to know you more fully. He desires for you to know Him in a very intimate way. But in that way, it can only come through a relationship with Him. I'm glad you declared yourself a good shepherd. So I know He's truly there to provide me, to pilot me, to protect me, to pursue me. Just think about what those words are saying. Provides, pilots, protects, pursues. Who wouldn't want that type of person in their life? Someone who's truly concerned about your well-being, about where you are, where you're walking in this life. No matter what you're going through, no matter what heartache is coming upon you, no matter what struggle you may be having, He cares. And He's offering not only to go through you with it, but to help you through it and to bring you out of it. This is what He offers. And this is what He declares as being this good shepherd. So we can truly say, devil, bring on your best. Bring on the battle. Because I have one who will provide for me, who will pilot me, who will direct my path, who will protect me. And honestly, I thank God that He pursues me. So bring it on. Because He truly is the Good Shepherd. As the psalmist says, Jesus, you're the lover of my soul. And this morning as you stand, I'm going to just sort of just open the altar this way. Whether you're grabbing a hold of Him all out and follow Him with everything that's in you. You say, Lord, I just want to declare this morning that I know You as my Lord and Savior. I just want to make a declaration again. I declare You're the Good Shepherd. I'm trying to make it easy for others who want to come up possibly. Maybe you're here this morning and say, you know, Pastor, maybe I've sort of wandered away from the flock because I'm not really hearing His voice the way I should, or I'm not necessarily understanding His discipline. I don't know Him the way that I should know Him. And allow some things to get away. But I want to declare again this morning that He is my good shepherd. And I need Him. I just want to invite you to come up and just spend some time with Him. Because this song, like I said, something called Jesus, Lover of My Soul. He loves you unconditionally. And He desires to give you the best life you could ever have. But it's only a life that He can offer. And I think this morning, we see here, He's offering us a lot. And some of the questions I asked earlier about His personal and corporate worship and priorities, spending time growing and studying His Word, and regular habit. When I talked about all of those, as you draw closer to Him, and as you begin to know Him more, these things will just be, honestly, there'll be a natural occurrence of what happens in your life. They'll naturally transpire. They'll naturally occur. Because you're getting close to Him and you want to know more about Him. This isn't a beat-up time. This is a time to say, come to the love of your soul. Come to the Good Shepherd and receive what He's offering you today. So as you stand, if that's you, as we sing this song, would you come forward? Whether you just want to fresh again declare, He's the one, and I'm saying, Jesus, I love You. Thank You for being my shepherd. or that Jesus, I need to return to you, that's okay. Let's call on the shepherd this morning, okay? Let's close and say, Jesus, lover